Continuing on from last episode's grand reveal of the real villain in the story, episode 5 starts with Chairman Jeon begging his master, Jung Jung-woo, to give him more time to find out how or who made their pharmaceutical factory explode. Jung Jung-woo, who is for some reason naked in this interaction, reminds Chairman Jeon who is the boss and warns him to not have too many opinions and ideas since he's just a puppet. He pushes him down and begins to strangle him to near death before barking out his next orders. Cover up the truth that the factory was bombed, issue press release that the fire was due to faulty wiring, hold a press conference to deal with the imminent stock decline, and get Woo-sun to help clean up the mess. We learned that the new antagonist is extremely violent, but intelligent, and that Chairman Jeon appears to be extremely obedient on the outside, but inside he longs to be freed from his puppet status. Well, obviously. Meanwhile, Vincenzo and Taec-yeon enjoy a beer together to celebrate their small victory. Vincenzo wants to know what dirty secrets Taec-yeon has on Babel in order to plot their next attack. She identifies their next target, a subsidiary of Babel that is used to manipulate stocks that also happens to cause major harm to society, Babel Chemicals. The next day, Vincenzo roleplays as a cheeky gym jockey who runs into Chairman Jeon and strikes up a conversation about how impressive it is that he runs Babel Group at such a young age. 5 minutes and one hilarious interaction later, he concludes confidently that Chairman Jeon is not the real boss of Babel. Why? He's too dumb to be. He tells Taec-yeon that it's quite common for the Mafia to have a figurehead and a puppet, so they need to figure out who's calling the shots behind the scenes. Speaking of the devil, Jung Jung-woo continues to play the innocent, clueless psychic to Taec-yeon and calls her to chatter up. She happily tells him that the fire at Babel factory is nothing short of divine punishment, and he totally agrees. Hanging up though, he becomes furious, and here I realize I'm starting to like Taec-yeon more because I'm worried about her and her closeness to the devil. After a traumatizing experience at the laundromat, Miss Choi is desperate to find out who is the voice behind the threatening phone call. She suspects the new mysterious character that's shown up around Hong Cha-yeon, but CEO Han tells her that Vincenzo has a clean record as an ordinary lawyer from Italy. Miss Choi decides to visit Vincenzo to see what he's like. Cha-yeon wants to hide Vincenzo's identity a little bit longer, so she introduces him as having a swollen tonsil that is preventing him from talking. Not easily dismissed, Miss Choi forces herself back into the office to have tea under the guise of wanting to congratulate Cha-yeon on opening her own firm, while trying to find ways to get Vincenzo to talk. When she fails, she eventually leaves, but she kind of achieved her objective anyways, which is figuring out that Vincenzo is a smooth character and not your average Joe. On the other side, Jung Jung-woo orders Chairman Jeon to then order Woo-sun Law to promote him to a partner at the firm, so he can have more visibility and control over the developing war against Cha-yeon. CEO Han and Miss Choi readily comply. Random law associate turns partner overnight. Right, that's not suspicious at all. Vincenzo and Taec-yeon talk about how Babel Chemicals is developing a chemical that is highly toxic and in the process has already killed around 40 people. Most of them developed leukemia from exposure to BLSD, a banned substance in the States. There is actually a lawsuit initiated by the victims' families against Babel Chemical, but it's going nowhere because Babel's bought out the defense lawyer, the hospital providing the medical testimony, and the media. Taec-yeon believes they can cause some real damage to Babel Chemical by taking over the lawsuit to defend the victims' families. I love how Taec-yeon put together a whole PowerPoint presentation for this, guys, so they get to work. I'm starting to love their schemes, and this one is no different. First, they go to meet the corrupt defense lawyer that represents the families and requests that he resign from the case. The corrupt lawyer gets irritated by their accusations and kicks them out of his office. Taec-yeon tells Vincenzo that it's easier to just get the victims' families to fire their lawyer, but Vincenzo is sure that that wouldn't work. So they made a bet out of it. The loser will get their forehead flicked by the winner. Those who do not understand this bet, I bet you have never felt the pain of a forehead flick. So next, they meet with the family members, and true to Vincenzo's prediction, Taec-yeon struggles to get through to them, as they find a direct fight against Babel too scary. To prove how scary Babel is, the next scene shows Chairman Jeon gathering all the Babel executives for a lunch meeting, and forcing them to eat extremely spicy noodles until they come up with a solution mission to recover the stock prices. In the middle of his fun, he gets a call from Jeon Jung-woo, who orders him to attend a press conference to release the new chemical BLSD and hype up the progress in order to increase the stock price. As he's about to shake the hands of one of the researchers for his photo op, the guy throws up blood all over Chairman Jeon and collapses, causing a great commotion. In the middle of all that chaos, someone threatens the researcher that no ambulance will be called unless he signs some confidentiality papers not to speak to the press. Vincenzo comes to collect on the bet, preparing to leave a real mark on Chaeyoon's forehead. But when he sees her nervously closing her eyes and acting adorable, he softens his stance and only gives her a light tap. A cute atmosphere surrounds them, which is then promptly ruined by the appearance of Jeon Jung-woo. Jeon Jung-woo tells Chaeyoon that he's become a partner at Ulsan law firm. She isn't impressed, but does offer to buy him food to celebrate. So no one finds this promotion suspicious? Like no one? Vincenzo was not about to join them for dinner until Jeon Jung-woo taunts him that he probably can't handle spicy Korean food, being like Italian and all. So then it was game on, and they spend time trash-talking each other while pretending not to find their food spicy at all. And just like that, the much-anticipated first showdown between Vincenzo and Jeon Jung-woo happened over spicy food while wearing bibs. It's everything I imagined and more. The researcher's guardian comes to the hospital and we learn that he's actually one of the monks from Gunga Plaza. He learns that his friend has a form of leukemia, which the doctor states he couldn't have gotten from work unless he failed to follow protocols at Babel Chemical. I love how he specifically clarified that. Suspicious all around. Vincenzo tells the monk that his friend got leukemia from working with chemical BLSD, and the hospital the researcher is in is owned by Babel. The next day, the defense lawyer heads to his office to find the monks and the victims' families inside performing a ritual. In the midst of his confusion, Chaeyoon shows up and serves him a dismissal notice. He no longer represents the victims. Turns out, Chaeyoon got her former co-worker from Busan drunk, who confessed to bribing the defense lawyer on Babel's behalf. A recording of this conversation easily convinces the victims' families to switch representation. Not only that, Vincenzo tells the defense lawyer he did not hide his dirty money well enough, which causes him to panic and sprint into his office. What awaits him is an empty safe with donation certificates thanking him for his generous giving. Chaeyoon and Vincenzo pay CEO Hang and Miss Choi a visit to inform them that she will now represent the families of the victims. Miss Choi recognizes Vincenzo's voice as the same voice who threatened her that night when she was in the laundromat, which is fine, he's not intending to hide any longer anyways. Chaeyoon lays down their conditions. If Babel Chemical admits wrongdoing, apologizes sincerely, and sufficiently compensate the victims, they'll drop the lawsuit. The deal also includes seizing the manufacturing of BLSD. On their way out, Jeon Jung-woo tries to convince Chaeyoon to leave Babel alone, but they pretty much ignore him. As the elevator door closes, he says to himself, "Chaeyoon, you're really testing my patience," which seems to mean that he has finally decided to go after her. I think he actually does like her, and that part isn't all pretend. But now, all bets are off. As both sides prepare late into the night for the court appearance, Chaeyoon asks Vincenzo what his plans are after they win. He tells her that by then his anger would have subsided and it would be time for him to leave Korea. What about the gold, bro? The next day, journalists flock to Ulsan to give their comments on the case until Vincenzo and Chaeyoon arrive in a Lamborghini, looking cool AF and grabbing all the attention. Chaeyoon announces herself as the representative of the families and then poses for the cameras. Vincenzo announces himself as an advisor as he cannot be a lawyer in Korea, but he also poses for the cameras. Across the street, there's a protest against Babel Chemicals put on by the Gunga Plaza tenant. Things are just getting way too dramatic. We're settling into the battle of the wits now, and at this point, it's hard to say which side has the upper hand. I love that Vincenzo's methods and schemes are creative instead of pure brutality, and he and Chaeyoon make a great team. This episode has a bunch of stories related to the Gunga Plaza residents as well, how they're banding together to help Vincenzo and Chaeyoon with their cause. But I did not include the subplots in order to keep the recap concise. If you want to watch those heartwarming and comedic scenes, be sure to check out the full-length episodes on Netflix. We also got to know the true villain a bit more in this episode, and so far I think he's just okay. Not sure why he's pretending to be a clueless pseudo-lawyer and what's his master plan. Do you guys like him so far? Let me know in the comments. And please subscribe so we can meet again in the next episode of Vincenzo.